Ever had a night that turned your world upside down? Years ago, about 15, I met a woman entirely by chance. I think I helped her carry something. We struck up a conversation and enjoyed a pleasant chat. One thing led to another, and we decided to meet again. We got together at a cafe, and after a while it felt too soon to part, yet too ripe a moment not to take another step. That's when she asked, "Did you drive here?" "Yes," I replied, "I did. Why do you ask?" "Well," she said, "my friends invited me to their cabin for the weekend, and I've no idea how to get there. It's quite remote, only a couple of buses a day. Maybe we could go together, only if you don't have other plans, of course." "No plans," I assured her. "Is it convenient, though?" "Oh, totally," she laughed. "I've told them all about you, and we can always come back if anything." Her assurance, "we can always come back," somehow sealed the deal for me with its charm. I felt a warmth spread inside me. "Let's do it," I exclaimed. We left on Friday evening. I picked her up as we had agreed, near the Children's Book House on Maple Street. It was late October or early November. No snow yet, definitely. Our route was half remembered, half improvised. We missed a couple of turns and had to double back. But it was all fun and no stress, never boring with good company. At worst, we joked, we could get lost and camp out in a field. I remember the route vaguely, she told me as we drove. Turn right after the old campsite, then through some fields, past an abandoned summer camp, and then through a village. We drove through the village, and she said, "We're not far now, about 10 miles left." It was nearing midnight, and the roads were deserted. No people, no cars, just empty countryside. Just as we left the village, maybe a mile or so out, it began to snow, a rare, heavy snowfall. It was like the clouds had descended right onto the road. The snowflakes were large, slow, and dense. Visibility became zero. Our headlights just reflected off the white wall of snow. At first we crept along, but eventually we had to stop. Everything around us quickly turned white, blurring the edges between the road, the shoulder, and the ditch. One wrong turn, and you'd end up in a field. We sat there in the middle of the road, going nowhere. This can't last long, we thought, but it just kept falling. Then my enchanting companion suggested, "How about I get out and lead the way on foot? We're close by. Otherwise, we might be stuck here till morning." It sounded like something out of a war movie. I vaguely remembered a similar scene. "All right," I agreed, "if you're sure. Let's not just sit here." She stepped out, sweeping snow off the car wing with her glove as she went ahead. The density of the snow hit me fully, only then. She took a step away from the hood. I glanced away for a second to shift gears, and just like that, after the car door shut, she vanished. I sat there a bit longer, thinking she'd realize I wasn't following and come back. But she didn't return. I got out into the complete darkness and blinding snow. I couldn't even see my hand in front of me. The snow covered her tracks instantly. I turned off the car, listened in the utter silence. I yelled, "Maria, Maria!" Nothing. I thought maybe she was playing a trick, hiding just a few feet away, laughing at me. I tried walking a bit in the direction I last saw her, still calling out. After a while I smoked a cigarette, listened again, nothing but the sound of my own breathing. Eventually I went back to the car, turned off the headlights. They were useless and just dazzled, left the parking lights on and the emergency flashers, then dozed off. I woke up at dawn. The snow had stopped. Ahead on the asphalt, I could see that someone had driven around me in the night. I wiped my eyes, drank some tea, looked at the map. Indeed, about 10 miles to the place she mentioned. I drove there. It was a mess. Cabins, some construction, old barns. I drove around thinking, what am I even looking for? And that was it. I didn't know her last name, address, phone number, where she worked, or where she might have gone. She just disappeared into the snowstorm. The scent of her perfume lingered in the car for days after, or perhaps I imagined it all. Ever had that chill run down your spine on a stormy night? Late one evening, John and Mary Simmons were driving home through a mountainous region outside their small town. Their route took them along a winding road surrounded by a dense forest, illuminated only by the headlights of their car and the occasional flash of lightning. The rain was pouring down heavily, making the road slippery and treacherous. John drove cautiously, his hands tight on the steering wheel, as Mary kept an eye on the GPS to ensure they stayed on track. As they rounded a sharp bend, they spotted a car that had skidded off the road into a ditch and slammed into a tree. "Someone's had an accident," John said, slowing down even further. "We should see if they need help," Mary replied, her voice laced with concern. John parked their car on the shoulder and rushed out into the rain. Approaching the wreck, he saw the front of the vehicle was crushed, the windshield shattered. Through the veil of rain, he could make out two figures in the front seats, a man and a woman, both drenched in blood, their heads hanging limply. As John got closer, the ghastly realization hit him. Their heads were nearly severed, dangling by mere threads. It was a horrific sight. They were clearly beyond help. In the back seat, curled up, was a little girl, about 7 or 8 years old. Despite the severity of the crash, she seemed miraculously unharmed, likely saved by her seatbelt. With considerable effort, John pried the car door open. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, reaching to check her pulse. The girl's eyes fluttered open, but she did not respond. She seemed dazed, still in shock from the trauma. Gently, John lifted her, holding her close to shield her from the rain, and carried her back to his car. "Her parents, they didn't make it," John told Mary as he settled the girl in the back seat. "She seems okay, but I'm not sure. We need to get her to a hospital fast. She might have internal injuries," Mary said, wrapping the girl in a blanket to keep her warm. As John drove, the atmosphere in the car grew tense. The road was still slick with rain, and he had to focus intensely to avoid any mishaps. Meanwhile, Mary continued navigating, searching for the quickest route to the nearest hospital. "The couple in that car, they were in bad shape," John said, breaking the silence. "Their injuries were horrific." Mary didn't respond. "It was the worst accident I've ever seen," John continued. Still, Mary remained silent. Glancing over, John saw her staring straight ahead, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth agape in a silent scream. A ghastly cut ran across her throat, blood pouring down onto her chest. John's heart raced as he looked in the rearview mirror, only to see the little girl licking a blood-stained knife. "Ever thought you were alone on a snowy highway? Think again. I always thought that the supernatural stuff bypassed me and my family. I even believed that all those spooky stories were just figments of someone's imagination. But recently, I visited my dad in Kalamazoo. He lives there. I'm in New York. We stayed up late catching up. It had been a year and a half since we last saw each other. We started reminiscing about the 90s when we all lived in Pittsburgh. My mom and I moved to D.C. in '98, and he moved to Kalamazoo in '99. Things didn't work out between them, and we left. I was surprised he didn't stay in Pittsburgh since he had connections and a 4-bedroom house there. I'd wondered about it for years, but never dared to ask, thinking maybe it was some personal reason. But this time, I figured there was nothing scary about the question, and we were both adults. I could handle the truth. The answer I got, though, was totally unexpected. Here's what he told me. Back then, he was a long-haul trucker, mostly driving around the Midwest. Once he took a job delivering goods to Omaha, which paid well. He drove there during the winter, taking it easy and enjoying the landscape. After delivering the goods, he headed back via a different route, since the one he came on was blocked by snow and a major traffic jam. Now, driving back empty, he passed through some small towns and then a long stretch of forest. He told me he drove about 20-30 miles into the forest without seeing a single car ahead or behind. Peering into the distance, he saw someone standing by the roadside. At first, he thought it was just a large stump. He thought maybe someone got lost out here in the winter, though why anyone would wander the woods in winter was beyond him. He slowed down. The truck skidded a bit on the icy road. After passing the figure by about 50 yards, he looked in the rearview mirror. The figure hadn't moved. So he leaned out the window and shouted, "Hey buddy, hop in. I'll give you a lift." But this guy turned around slowly, looked at him for a few seconds, and started walking towards him. My dad said he felt something was off before he even saw it clearly. The guy looked normal enough, a gray hoodie, cap, jeans, and sneakers. Weird for the 90s, right? But his eyes were unnaturally large, about 3 times the size of a normal human's, and his upper teeth were sharp and protruded over his lip. My dad, understandably freaked out, slammed the window shut and floored it. As he picked up speed, this guy, if you can call him that, started running after him. My dad was doing 60 to 70 miles per hour, terrified of flipping the truck, but this creature kept up. Soon another one ran out of the woods, then 3 more joined in. My dad was in tears, thinking he'd either crash or be caught by these creatures. Somehow, he managed to get to the end of the forest stretch, where they finally fell behind. He made it to the nearest truck stop, the kind with a lousy diner and a place to sleep, grabbed some vodka, and told the owner everything. The guy just chuckled and warned my dad not to drink and drive, saying he might start seeing things. My dad brushed off the whole ordeal. The guy just didn't believe in that stuff. He paid for parking and slept in the truck. When he woke up needing to use the bathroom, it was pitch black outside. Deciding to turn on the headlights to see his way to the restroom, he turned on the wipers to clear the windshield and saw them. About 10 of those creatures, all lined up in front of the cab, staring at him with those huge eyes. He thought one even had blood dripping from the corner of its mouth. The only thing that crossed his mind was, this is it. He hit the horn, the truck roared to life, and the creatures scattered. My dad drove off as fast as he could, the darkest part being he couldn't see anything in the mirrors. It was unclear where those creatures were or if they were following him. After that, he never stopped until he reached Pittsburgh. He started getting up at night to look out the window, terrified that those creatures had followed him home and figured out where he lived. On New Year's Eve, '99, he went out to the balcony for a smoke in the evening and saw them again, 3 of them standing under a streetlight, staring. He locked himself in his apartment, closed all the windows with curtains, and spent all night on the phone with a friend, another night owl, just to feel like he wasn't alone. The next day, my dad left everything behind, bought a train ticket to Kalamazoo, sold his Pittsburgh apartment from there, and bought a run-down 2-bedroom in the heart of Kalamazoo. He says he hasn't seen any of those creatures since.